Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a continuation of the War Magic series. This will be level 5 Divine Spells out of the core rulebook. We're going to look at the spells, figure out what is already very devastating for a battlefield situation, medieval style battlefield situation, and then in addition to that, we're going to go in and see what could be turned creatively into like one-use items that could really hamper or change the flow of a battle. Now, we're not diving into the domains of the clerics, and then I plan to do the cleric divine spells first, and then we'll dive into the druid divine spells in this episode in that order. So, without further ado, let's start looking at the 5th level divine spells. Atonement removes burden of misdeed, so that wouldn't be beneficial for war magic. Break enchantment, free subject from enchantments, transmutations, and curses. That can be beneficial if you know of somebody that's been polymorphed and you need them to be back to what they were, like a dragon that's turned into a toad or something. That could cause a massive devastation amongst your enemies if that is used in that fashion. Breath of Life cures 5d8 plus 1, restores life to recently slain creatures. I believe that is single target, but let's look that up to make sure. Touch, creature touched. So yep, single creature. Command greater as command, but affects one subject per level. That can be beneficial to get a few of the enemy soldiers to obey you for a short couple of minutes. Because at this level, you'd be able to get at least 11 of them. So we go from there to commune. Deity answers a yes or no question. That might be beneficial if you need to know where another enemy is going to be, and this deity could answer that to you. Not all deities are all-knowing, all-seeing, so it would have to pertain to their portfolio for that to be beneficial. Cure Light Wounds Mass. Now that can be very useful. One subject per level, so up to 11 people at the time you can cast this. If you put this on one-use items and distribute it amongst your military, after a couple of rounds of combat, if somebody would activate it, it would heal an area of your guys that are injured, bringing their health back up, bringing the morale back up, allowing the combat to continue. Then from there you got Dispel Chaos, Evil, Good, Law. That wouldn't be great unless you're fighting outsiders. But if you're fighting outsiders, one-use items that are doing that would be very useful. Disrupting Weapon as a one-use item, say an oil you can pour on your weapon or whatnot, that would be very useful since it destroys undead that you hit with it. Now, it probably won't be very beneficial against vampires or liches or death knights. Only saying that because their saves are probably a lot better suited against this thing. But if they fail their save, they are destroyed. Flame Strike smites foe with Divine Fire. That one is very useful. If I remember correctly, Flame Strike is a 20-foot radius, like 30-foot cylinder. So you're putting a big area on fire. And that'll take out a lot of people pretty quick. If you had these in, say, beads, and give them to the slingers, and have a couple of slingers amongst your regular troops, sling them into the middle of the enemy's formations, you can devastate large portions of their military in one go. And at this level, it'll do 11d6 fire damage. Hollow, designate location as holy. If you're fighting undead, that would be very useful, especially if you could get a few clerics or a few one-use items to sanctify the area before the undead start marching on it. Inflict light wounds mass. That could be very useful. Most of your good militaries, and that'd be one supported by a good church, wouldn't have access to this as much. But your evil militaries or your orcs and whatnot would. And the same thing as the heal, this would be great to throw amongst your enemies and use, or the undead could carry that and it could affect all the undead in the area, which would be really good too. Insect plagues. Wasp swarms attack creatures. Let's look that one up because that one sounds very useful. Insect plague, range, long, 400 feet plus 40 feet per level, so it's already a great battlefield distance spell. One swarm of wasps per 3 levels. And they must stay close to each other. Not that big of a deal. Lasts 1 minute per level, so you're looking at least 11 minutes by the time you can cast this. The maximum number of swarms is 6 at 18th level, which would only matter if you're dealing with high level players. So it attacks any creature occupying its area. Makes sense. Swarms are stationary after being summoned and won't pursue creatures that flee. So you could block off areas with the swarms, which would be very interesting. It does not give you damage for what the swarm does, so probably have to look up a lower spell. Let's look under troops. So it doesn't give damage under summon swarm either. So you'd have to figure out how much a swarm would do in damage and then apply that to them, which could be a lot, could be a little bit. Either way, wasps would have poison as well, so. Mark of Justice designates action that triggers curse on subject. That could be great for trapping an area that you didn't want, like an enemy strike force getting into or having access to. Plane shift. As many as 8 subjects travel to another plane. That can be useful as long as they can return. You could always send a strike force into the ethereal or shadow plane and have them circumvent the military and then pop out. So that could be very useful for that. Raise Dead restores life to subject who died as long as 1 day per level ago. That'd be good for bringing your heroes back, but not great for a military that had suffered severe casualties. Now, if the heroes of that military suffered casualties, then you could bring those heroes back. Righteous Might, your size increases and you gain bonus in combat. That isn't very great by itself, but if you put that on a one-use item and all of a sudden a portion of your army grows in size, then that can be very intimidating. especially since their damage and attack would have increased. Scrying, spies on subject from a distance. That's good for information gathering, but not great for military combat by itself. Slay living, touch attack deals 12d6 plus 1 per level. That would be great as a one-use item. Put that on an arrow and shoot it at somebody. Put that on a put that on a sling bullet. Hit an enemy target with that, and they take 12 dice damage. Everyone that's hit would pretty much be destroyed. It'd be an expensive one-use item if you wanted to mass produce it in a big enough scale to like wipe out a 200-man force, but if you just wanted to create massive casualties all of a sudden, that would be a great way to do it. And it's a touch attack, so the arrow just touching their armor or the sling bullet just touching their armor counts as a connection for the spell. Now, as far as the arrow or the bullet goes, damage isn't done, but the slay living spell would take place. So 12 dice to most things that you would target with that are normally in a military combat, averaging between level 1 and 5, you destroy instantly. Summon Monster 5, very useful, especially if you use it to summon monsters for Summon Monster 3 in mass number, or 2 Summon Monster 4s, and sending them into your enemies. If you could drop a few of those all at once, say a couple of gems or a couple of beads that have Summon Monster on them, and then you just throw them into the enemy's formation and then the monsters appear, that could give you a lot of advantage. So a lot of chaos. Symbol of Pain. If you put that on, say, a shield, the same thing with the next one, Symbol of Sleep. If you put that on a shield, your enemy's there, and you say the command word to activate it, and then they being there trigger it, then the nearby creatures racked with pain, or the nearby creatures in a catatonic slumber, that can take out like the first row of a shield wall pretty quick, or at least make holes in the shield wall pretty quick. True Seeing lets you see all things as they really are. It's good and bad. The bad part is it lets you see in the ethereal, and there are things in the ethereal that you might not want to see. But as far as a useful spell, combat-wise, if you're dealing with a lot of invisible creatures or a lot of undead, then it can be very useful. It'll at least let you see all the ghosts that are wandering around. Unhollow designates location as unholy. If you're running the undead force, Unhollow would be great for you to have if you could pre-set up the area with these objects that would unhollow the ground. Wall of Stone creates a stone wall that can be shaped. That could be great to force the enemy forces to move in a way that would benefit you, or to channel them into a narrower passage where you could probably rain down death from above with arrows and whatnot. That is the last of the cleric spells. Let's look at the druid spells for 5th level. Animal growth. 1 animal doubles in size. That could be very bad. Get a hold of an elephant, a rhino. If you wanted to stretch the rules a little bit, a T-Rex, and it just doubles in size, that would cause a lot of devastation. They get Atonement, which, like I said, wasn't that great. Awaken. Animal or tree gains human intelligence. Use animal growth with Awaken, and now the creature knows what it's doing, why it's attacking, where it's attacking. The downside, I would say, with the Awaken is now it has human intelligence. So if it was obeying to obey, it's now going to obey until it chooses that its life is more precious than everything else, and it's going to retreat. So it would have more of a human morale than an animal morale. Baleful Polymorph transforms subject into harmless animal. Use that on something like a T-Rex, and then reverse that when the combat begins, have this creature at close to the front lines and reverse it. That would do lots and lots of interesting and chaotic damage to the combat. Call Lightning Storm. This gives you multiple bolts to shoot down, and it by itself wouldn't be enough to devastate an army, but it would devastate their formations for a couple of turns. Wherever the bolt did strike, it would be enough to kill most, if not any, soldier that was standing there that's a normal soldier. Commune with nature. That could be good if you wanted to know what would be a better terrain to set up your battlefield if you're not familiar with the area. Control winds. That can be useful if you wanted to control the ability to use ranged combat in the battle. You increase the winds and change the distance to fly towards your enemies. Now your distance is increased a little bit, and they have a very hard time shooting back at you. Especially if you bring the winds up to about 20 miles per hour or more. Cure light wounds, cure critical wounds. So this is the single target spell that the clerics get at earlier levels. It wouldn't be beneficial for combat, but as single use items, that'd be great for your characters that have more than 3 hit dice. Death Ward would be great if you're fighting a bunch of undead because it gives you bonuses versus death spells and negative energy. And some undead just deal some negative energy, and that'd be great to have protection from. So with that, I'd probably put that on one-use items once you've confirmed that you're fighting undead as the main enemy force. Hollow, Insect Plague, Stone Skin. Stone Skin grants DR 10 to Adamantine. If you had a bunch of one-use items for Stone Skin on your military force and they used it, most normal weapons chosen for military combat, the long spear, the short spear, the swords, long sword, battle axe, only do a d8 damage. So even with their strength bonus, unless they're really strong, they're not going to do any damage to you if you have the Stone Skin spell active. So you could pretty much negate damage and just deal damage to the enemy force if you could apply that to a massive amount of soldiers. Now, it wouldn't be that cost effective because it's a 5th level spell, but say even if your front row just did it. If your front row was 25 people wide and they all pretty much aren't taking any damage, then even their back rows would be able to help apply damage to the front. Then you're looking at a lot of devastation for the duration of Stone Skin. Summon Nature's Ally 5, just like Summon Monster, be useful. Transmute Mud to Rock and Transmute Rock to Mud. The Rock to Mud would be great to prevent the enemies from having any good footing, and the Mud to Rock would be really good for you to have good footing. Tree Stride. Tree Stride would be great for getting behind your enemies, or if you could give that to multiple people, moving a small attack force to a different location to attack from where they'd have more advantage. Unhollow. Wall of Fire. Deals 2d4 fire damage out to 10 feet and 1d4 out to 20 feet. Passing through the wall deals 2d6. If you wanted to delay your enemy's ability to, say you had a plan that you knew the frontline morale would break and you have more backup reinforcements, you could, as soon as the front line breaks, drop a wall of fire. The enemy has to either wait for the wall of fire to dissipate, take damage to go through it, or find a way around it, all of which would bide you time. Wall of Thorns. Thorns damage anyone who tries to pass. So like Wall of Fire, except it's not damaging you for being close, it's only damaging you if you're trying to pass it. And those are the 5th level divine spells. If you have any useful ways to use any of the spells that I listed that I didn't cover, please put them in the comments below. Until we game again.